Welcome back, everybody, to the OK Grognard Show. It is Thursday, January 21st, 2021, 10 a.m. Central, in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. We're going to talk about levels of prep today. Hours of work or improvising. What does that all mean? Well, it's pretty straightforward, really. How much time do you want to put in for games you're going to run as a DM is really what it's about. And while we're on the subject of prep, let's not neglect the idea that players have a certain amount of prep that they can do too. And I'm a fan of players doing a little bit of getting ready outside of a game beyond just paper, writing instrument, having a set of dice or more, player's handbook, any supplementary material that pertains to your character that's been approved by the DM. For instance, if you're playing first edition and your dungeon master says that unearthed arcana is an acceptable source for spells for your spellcasting character class, then by all means. If the DM is allowing people to buy equipment from the extended lists that are part of Unearthed Arcana, then, make sure there's one at the table. I mean, for equipment, you don't need one around all the time, so maybe every player doesn't have to carry one. But if you're casting spells, and you're casting spells from the Unearthed Arcana extended lists, then by all means you want to make sure that you have that available to you. Now, as far as prep for your character is concerned, oh no, did I freeze up there somehow? Uh-oh. Let me see if I can reboot my face here without disrupting everything. One more time. There we go. I think we're back. All right. I had frozen face. I had resting DM face. The thing to remember too, though, is if you're going to create some sort of a backstory for a player character, make sure that you consult with the DM about it. There are going to be a number of things that are taboo. I think a lot of DMs are against the idea of a player introducing a world-shaking backstory that includes a tattoo that portends to the end of times, and making sure that every player character is an orphan so that the DM can't mess with the families and play that game. Man, did I freeze up again? What is up with that? Let me try this one more time. There we go. Well, I don't know what's making that freeze, but I better keep an eye on it. I know my audio is still coming through, so if it's the case that it freezes up for good, then that'll just be too bad. In any event, make sure you consult with your DM, because there'll be a lot of things that the DM can suggest will enhance your player character. What region are you from? What sort of languages can you gain being from that region? Is there any special equipment that's available to somebody who's from that region or some from that area? So, there are things that you can add in to creating a character before you even start playing that the DM can help with. If you're not familiar with the setting, you wouldn't know of any of these things. If you are familiar with the setting, but perhaps not this area, then maybe not. There may be things that are available to magic users from this area that aren't available to fighters. So if you played a fighter before and were from the same area, you might not know of it or be able to take advantage of it. So, yeah, my phone was going off. Maybe that's what caused it. Messing with the Wi-Fi or something. I don't know. It's strange. Well, we won't worry about that. Let's move on and talk more about DM stuff. Oh, let me just say one more thing about players prepping before games. Don't create 20 pages of elaborate backstory of stuff if you're not familiar with the setting and you don't have the go-ahead from the DM and expect the DM to just take that and here's the story. I've written out everything that I'm going to want to do eventually. This is my backstory. It includes my wish list of things I'm going to be finding and the quests I'm going to go on and the rights I'm going to wrong, the wrongs I'm going to right. Either way, I don't know what your alignment is. And you just need to be cognizant that you can't just bring to the table 3/4 of a story and expect to play out the last quarter, and all the other players are just going to be bit characters in your story, and the DM is just going to finish out what you started for him or her to then flesh out for the remainder of the game. The campaign is not just going to be part of that. So, don't do that. There may be a DM that tells you, you know what, write up one page, be non-specific about places and times and things, and be more about your family and talk about who they are to you and where you grew up and what your background was. Here are some options for where to start. Start on a farm, start in the city as an apprentice for some trade, start in the city as an apprentice or somebody who's in low levels of government there. These are things that are like starting points for character backgrounds that work out pretty well. And this is prep for you as a DM too. If you're running a game, these are good ways to get campaigns started. And this is prep you can do prior to the campaign. But what about prep for the campaign as a whole from the DM's perspective, regardless of what player characters are? And this is key too, because maybe for certain campaigns, you don't want to create a whole lot of stuff regardless of the player characters. Maybe you should put together your group, get these characters created, and then begin to build a campaign. I mean, this assumes that you have a sort of an outline of a setting already, so you'll need something of that to know. You'll need to know at least, is it a medieval fantasy setting? Well, if you've told everybody you're playing D&D, then probably that's going to be assumed, but don't take it for granted. Make sure you mention it. If you're not starting out at first level, make sure to talk about what sort of levels you're going to begin at and what status or station in life the player characters are going to begin at. Like I said, if you do something where they're like a farmer or an apprentice tradesperson or low levels of government or something along those lines, perhaps an acolyte at a temple. If you're going to start off at that sort of level, then first level characters breaking out of that shell is pretty traditional, right? If, on the other hand, what you're doing is going to be higher level characters, then chances are you want to forego those sort of beginner status, you know, character types, separate from character class, because it may well be that what's going on there is that they would be too low a status. If you're starting your characters off as 5th level PCs, let's say 5th level fighter, magic user, a thief, a cleric, to put them in the positions of being a farmer, maybe that still works. Maybe whenever they're not adventuring, this fighter is back on the farm. An apprentice tradesperson, let's say this this thief works as an apprentice locksmith. I don't know, if you're 5th level, can you really be apprentice anymore? Maybe journeyman, maybe master, maybe not, maybe close. Depends on the size of the town, how much competition there is, right? The smaller the town, the less skill you would need to be the best one in the town at what you do, right? Low levels of government, if we were to assume, say, a magic user might be suited to being a government official at some point, an advisor or whatever. Of course, as a magic user, even if your campaign has some level of illiteracy amongst some of the classes, the magic user and the clerics are going to be literate. They're going to be able to read and write. They're going to be able to work in professions in government and areas where they'll need to be able to copy text down, take notes, keep track of inventories, whatever. And you can certainly say that if you're starting off at a 5th level campaign, that probably being just a low government official, a clerk or whatever, is too low a starting position for somebody who's a 5th level magic user, for instance. You may want to have them be an assistant to the advisor, I should say, just to make sure that you're doing it in the shrewdest of terms. So you could be a little higher up, you're not just recopying documents, you're not just pushing paper, you're assisting in diplomatic areas, whether it's greeting people that are coming into the area to meet with the higher ups and making them comfortable and having some sort of function as a representative of the government to outside entities. Certainly, it's possible that maybe in a metropolis where there are many, many higher level player characters running around, that even 5th level only gets you up to a certain level of station in non-player character class situations. So perhaps you are just an assistant advisor, or perhaps you're on a lower council in a committee that deals with something less important to government functionality, in charge of scheduling the watches, in charge of, get a little Tyrion here, in charge of making sure the sewer systems function, making sure the grain supply is properly managed so that so these are things, and you don't have to spend a lot of in-game time on this, but this is prep you can do for the player characters prior to the campaign starting, so they get a sense of how the setting works for non-player characters, so that they can then determine how they're going to fit in when they're not doing player characters stuff. If they're not off adventuring, do they just sit in a box or sit in a chair in a corner in town waiting for one guy to heal up, the other three got to sit around? And you don't want that. You want them to be able to fit back into their jobs. And it's also interesting too to be able to create moments in the game where the player characters have these regular positions, and if they're going to go off adventuring for a day or two, a week, longer, who fills their position when they're gone? Can they leave that and come back? Do they have to up and quit before they go? So you have to decide as a DM how much leeway you want. And a lot of it is going to depend on whether you want them to utilize a starting location as an ongoing headquarters. And if that's the case, if you decided that they can leave and come back and leave and come back, that they're not constantly having to make excuses for why they're gone, they're not going to lose these positions if they go off adventuring and then come back. If you've figured out a way to make it reasonable for them to be ongoing adventurers and to constantly be able to come back to these positions, then you might as well flesh out this starting area as more of an ongoing home base for them. So you certainly want a number of things prep-wise, right? You want a number of NPC characters that are their equals or underlings, people that are the people they're going to see every single day, day in and day out, and spend a great deal of time with. They can be peers, they can be rivals, they can be local bullies, they can be people that have no interest, but they're always around. You know, somebody that empties the chamber pots has a name. If this person's going to be seen every day, give them a name. Maybe that's all they're going to do. Maybe there's no more mystery to them. It doesn't hurt to have 75% of your characters be just plain and simple what they appear to be, right? These non-player characters, the guards that you pass every morning when you're walking out of your apartment or cell or whatever it is where you sleep. And I say cell like a monastery cell, not like a jail cell. When you leave that and you walk down to wherever it is that you perform your daily functions, you pass by a number of individuals, because routines are routines. And if you're on a regular routine, you're going to see some of the same people every day. So give them some names, put them in there, plug them into these spots. The two guards at the gate, Bert and Ernie, don't use those names, but give them a couple of names and give them some sort of 2-3 line backstory so that they can interact with some sense of depth with the player character once or twice. And then, you don't have to even mention them ongoing. Later on, further along, okay, well, you head out in the morning, you get down to work, and what do? We don't have to say, you go past Bert and Ernie, somebody's coming in and emptying your chamber pot. We don't have to go through all of those but once we've done it once or twice, and it's understood that it's part of the routine, then you can continue to do that. Hey, Rick, how you doing today? Just talking a little bit about Misty, how you doing? Talking a little bit about game prep. And so these are the kinds of things you can create as regular functions of the campaign that can create a level of immersion in the game for the player characters, for the players through their player characters, uh, right from the start. Ooh, windows are rattling there. Getting kind of windy outside here in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. It's even clipping on the mic there when I'm silent. In any event, what other sorts of levels of prep do you want to do? Well, once you've done this sort of beginner work, once you've set the stage for running the game week in and week out, this is not stuff you have to revisit too often. You've kind of laid a groundwork, and this is stuff you can fall back on too, though. Um, if, for instance, somewhere down the road, you need to create a situation in game where somebody's got to get a note to one of these player characters, some other NPC. Well, it's easy enough for him to stop by and leave a note with one of these guards you see every day, the player character sees every day. It's easy enough for other NPCs to interact with the NPCs you've already created that we know are part of the daily routine. So once you've created this level of ground level of prep, you can revisit it as necessary when you've got other situations further along in the campaign that require some sort of identity. And then, of course, the player characters aren't immediately suspicious of a note that's passed to them by a guard that they've known most of their life, and they know their family and they talk to him every day. When the guard says, "Oh, I don't know, they just handed it to me, said I should give it to you," they're not worried that it's got contact poison on it, and if they take it from him, it'll die. He's already touching it. He's kind of been the equivalent of a food taster in this situation, and because they trust this guard, they can then trust that the note is safe to handle, and then check out the note and move on from there. So those are levels of preps you can do. You can set up ahead of time that you can fall back on or reinitiate or utilize once again further along in the campaign, and they're always there for you. You don't have to create what they say every day. This is part of the improvising that you get to do. And there's an old tip they always tell. They always tell actors that a large part, perhaps the majority of acting, is listening. So when you're improvising, what an NPC might say in response, or might say to a character, a player character, listen to what the player character is saying. Listen to what the player is saying through their player character, because there's nothing that stalls a campaign faster than even a simple interaction that's disjointed. Because it's going to seem out of place. It's going to throw up a red flag. It's going to make players chase a red herring that you didn't intend for there to be there. So if a player character says, "Hey, Bert, how you doing today?" and you decide Bert's going to say, "Hi, how are you? I am fine," and that's all he ever says because you've written down that that's what he says to people when they come through. Well, we keep saying the same thing over and over. So personalize it. Listen to how he's being greeted and respond in a natural way, and let it be that. And let that be the improvising. Now, do we need to improvise further on that? Maybe it might be useful. Um, it's not impossible that when the guards are standing out there, one of them has a young kid who wants to be a guard like his dad, and so he's out there with a toy sword and wearing a helmet, and proud Bert as a papa is happy to let him stand there and pretend he's on guard duty too. It's a pretty safe gig where they are, and it's not really dangerous, and he knows his sergeant is someday going to need to recruit more soldiers, so he's kind of, or more guards, so he's talked to him about, my son keeps wanting to come, can I let him stand with me? And he says, yeah, sure, but, when he's old enough, make sure you get him to join the guard, because we always need more people. And so there's plenty of that. So maybe one day when they're coming out of your digs and heading down to your daily gig, there's another individual there, a child of one of the guards. You can play around with things like that, and that kind of improvising too also creates yet another level of immersion for players through their characters, because once you've set a routine, once you've used the prep work to create and set the stage for the player characters to perform on, so to speak, then mixing it up a little bit just makes it all the more real. Creating moments that are unusual or fresh, but still have the underpinnings of everything else you've created. That's what creates a depth to a role-playing setting from a prep level, but you built on something. In the improvising, you built on something that you've already prepared. So that combination, and you'll figure out as you do this that it's going to be different with every group of players. Some aren't going to care. They're gonna want to create a list of equipment and get right into dungeon crawling, and maybe whatever levels of prep you've created is just going to be ignored, and it's not even worth it. You've got to have your dungeon prepared. Certainly do those sort of things too, but don't force it. And there's an improvising tip. Don't force any of the stuff you've prepped on your players. You can introduce it, but if they want to ignore it, move on. Keep them interested. Keep moving toward things that they're interested in. And your prep work, you can use it some other time, somewhere down the road. Maybe not even with this group that you're running now. So don't ever think it's a waste. It'll always come in handy somewhere down the road. Well, that's about it for the day. I think we've gone over quite a bit of this levels of prep, hours of work, or improvising. I think it's true that you can always spend more time than you actually need. I don't think it's ever wasted. Spend a whole day trying to get a frying pan. Rick in the chat says that the group once spent a whole day trying to get a frying pan. Yeah, I've seen that kind of thing happen too, without a doubt. Hey, just in case you're catching this on YouTube and you're unaware, Mondays and Thursdays now, 10 a.m. Central. So we'll do another show come Monday. Rick, Misty, thanks very much for popping in. I see there are a couple other people in the chat too. Chrism 1964, Icaro 12, Oliveira. Right on. Appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure if you're not already a follower, you follow the channel here. And if you're catching up with this on YouTube, then do so, please. Follow over there, subscribe, give a thumbs up for any videos you watch and enjoy, and by all means, make comments in the comment section if you want to chime in on the discussion or extend it a little further. I appreciate it. From beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, this has been the OK Grognard Show. We'll catch you on Monday. Bye-bye.